Hello, everyone. Welcome to our weekly talk where we try and provide as much information as we can to our athletics community. This week we're talking on high performance. So Christian, Malcom, and myself will try and answer as many questions. I'm Andrew Faichney, the head of high performance systems, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague.
I'm Christian Malcom, head of high performance and coaching. As we all involved in right now, it's tricky times right now for us all. But we're trying to have this platform so we can answer as many questions as possible. And I hope you're all well right now. It's a good question. Yes, I do feel 400 meters can benefit from it, but it depends on the type of runner you are. There has to be some kind of endurance element in the 400 meter, especially, and that can be varied. It can be uh, doing the odd jogging session here and there, maybe 20 minutes of jogging a week. When I say 20 minutes, maybe one session, or it can be changed and you can implement it into your track session. That depends on the type of athlete and what you're looking for. I think for 400 meters who are more sprint based, they have to develop some kind of endurance. And I kind of think that jogging would benefit them a bit more so they
Yeah.
can focus on their true strength of that speed endurance element. I think those who have got more of an endurance-based type 400 meter runner, that 4-8 type runner, I think you're looking at doing longer sessions on the track.
Yeah. Yeah. It's there's a few different ways to attack most events, isn't there?
Nah, definitely, and it definitely depends on the type of makeup you are and the type of athlete you are, and what kind of training program you've been used to and what you've come off.
Uh, I think that's a really difficult situation that we're everyone's faced with at the moment, and I think the athletics community or all sporting community has been significantly affected. We've got a lot of unknowns at the moment. We've got a little bit of certainty around the Olympics and the Paralympics with dates. We've got more information from the Olympics on the qualifying period, which is great. We don't have that yet for the Paralympics, and we don't have that for the World Juniors at all in any information at this point in time. So there's a lot of unknowns. We don't know when we're going to be able to return to sport. I think that there was some answers, some information that Jonah Oliver provided last week, which is available through the virtual stadium. I guess from our side of the fence, there's probably two things. We'll try and provide as much information as we possibly can, as regularly as we possibly can. That's certainly a commitment from our side of the fence. And B, I guess probably if I look at it from my personal viewpoint on this, and I'm certainly not claiming to be an expert, but if you don't try and look too much into the future, if you try and set some goals which are more short term and achievable, rather than looking into that abyss of when competition may return, and whether that be September, October, November, December, or hopefully earlier than that. But that's a lot further into the distance. So it's a really difficult situation. I know that we're sort of going through a lot of planning for a great deal of unknowns at the moment, aren't we? So it's that's all we can do, I guess, and we'll try and provide any certainty as quickly as we possibly can.
Yeah, it's very tough and challenging now, but I think it lends an opportunity to be able to try and work on those weaknesses which you may find in your training or things that you've wanted to work on or develop in this time. But I agree with Andrew. It's just setting yourself those short-term goals and not looking too far ahead right now because it's unknown for all of us, and and as Andrew said, we're trying to plan ourselves, and it's really difficult to plan when you just don't know when you can really get back to business as
Yeah.
usual.
Yeah, it's a question which does come up from time to time, and I guess what we're governed by is the AIS funding model, which is linked specifically through really the Olympic and Paralympic events, and at the moment, the deaf aren't a classification within the Paralympics, and haven't been, and so we're sort of limited in what we can support and focus on, and we have to look at our resources fairly carefully. So they're pretty much tied to the Paralympics and Paralympic classifications. So that's where we're situated. It's as part of our agreement with the Australian Institute of Sport and Paralympics Australia.
Yes.
Yeah. So Gold Coast Marathon we're talking about here, and the Events Management Queensland have put out a statement recently that the board have of Events Management Queensland have decided to suspend planning and entry registrations for the Gold Coast Marathon, and that will be reviewed on the 19th of May, or when a revised public health order provides them with certainty of the future of this year's event. Our national championships is tied to that event. So we await what that move is, and if it goes ahead, then we will most likely look to continue with the national championships. If it doesn't, then we'll have to assess. I guess if in a similar way to where we got to with our Australian Track and Field Championships as well, where we unfortunately had to get to a position of cancellation of those events. So we hope that doesn't happen, but unfortunately the current scenario is impacting on a lot of different events, and Gold Coast Marathon certainly one of those. So hopefully we'll be able to continue through. We'll certainly let people know a little bit more information when we have it. So,
At the moment, the same with a lot of things. Everything is in its early stages right now. It's going to be very challenging for a lot of athletes to be able to double those championships. I myself has experienced two championships close together back in 2002, where we had the Commonwealth Games in Manchester, and then a week later, then we had to be in Munich for the European Championships. Some was able to achieve that in certain events, some of the field events. Some of the sprinters were able to double, some chose not to. I just concentrate on one or the other, and did relays in both. For the longer distance events, I think they're gonna have to make a decision really on what they're gonna do. But until we get that timetable, it's going to be a tough decision to make right now. And I think hopefully they can get the timetable out earlier, because the earlier they can, the easier it is for you as athletes to plan for that, and coaches.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess where the World Championships are in Oregon, we've also got to factor in that flying from the west coast of the US through to Birmingham. So that's not as easier if it was on the east coast of the US or Europe into Europe as well. But hopefully we'll be able to get that info, as you say, and put some plans particularly in place.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be, it's definitely going to be a challenging one, and obviously, I talk about traveling in Europe when I had my experience, but when you talk about crossing from the other side of the world, from the US over to the UK, it's it's going to be very tough. But
Yeah. Oh, that's a very very good question. I think all of us were hoping that it'll be sooner rather than later. but it's impossible to say at this point in time. I think that many people, especially our distance runners, would love for there to be some cross country fairly soon. I know that our member associations are working pretty hard to be able to turn around very, very quickly and put an event on as soon as the government regulations allow for. From our side of the fence, as far as track and field is concerned, we know that the Olympic window period has been closed until the 1st of December. At the very least, I'd be hoping that we were able to start competition very quickly after that. I mean, the reality is everyone's going to be missing it. I guess the good thing from an Australian point of view or a Southern Hemisphere point of view is that that window is over our winter period, whereas for Europeans or Northern Hemisphere, the window where it's closed is over their summer. So, perhaps that's the first time that we get an advantage from a significant decision. But we'd like to hope that we'll be able to get activity going and competitions as soon as possible.
Yeah, and it's definitely a big advantage as well, as you say, being in the Southern Hemisphere. I know of athletes and coaches who are not too happy with that decision, with the hopes of being able to still try and compete at the back end of this year, at the Northern Hemisphere season, which at the moment I think is highly unlikely. So hopefully we can get those competition dates out soon.
Absolutely.
Well, that's an interesting one. Especially when talking about a distance runner, me as a sprinter. um, you know, you need that volume in your run, especially with endurance. You need to build that base, the capacity, to be able to obviously do the event, one, but two, to be able to back those races up and to be able to recover quickly so you can race again. For me, my main focus was always trying to prepare myself for the championships. When you go to a major championships, you got to be prepared to do 3 rounds. In order to do that, you have to get the volume in. When it comes to strength and conditioning side of things, I think it's always better to do your S&C after sessions. I would do the odd session as a sprinter or more power based athlete. I would do the odd session, the odd strength and conditioning session or weight session beforehand, but that was more of an activation session than anything. So I wouldn't go out there and I wouldn't do a full on heavy strength program before I would do my running session. I'd always do it afterwards. And the options are there. You can either do it the next day or you can do it an hour or so, or half an hour or so after you've done your track session, lending your time to give you a recovery day the following day. And it depends on how your program's set up. But, I think if you're going to do a very intense weight session, then give yourself that time to do it after the track session, and then you've got a bit of time to recover then.
Yeah. Something which we're working on at the moment. It needs to be there's a little bit of process to go through with approvals from the Australian Olympic Committee and obviously Athletics Australia board sign off and so on as well before we can produce that. But we've that's in train at the moment. We'd like to hope we'd be able to get it out as soon as we possibly can. World Athletics providing that information around the qualification window was the initial step for us, and we'll get it out so that everyone can understand what the process and what the policy says as soon as we possibly can.
Well, it's an interesting one. When you're talking from a younger level, When I say younger, under the age of 17, I always remember that coaches used to say to my coach and to the way my training group trainers that we didn't do enough work. And what I meant was by we didn't do enough work, we didn't do the 300s, the 400s, the 250s and stuff like that. But what we did was a lot of quality training. So we did a lot of technical work. We would do a lot of block sessions working on our speed and acceleration. We would do a lot of 110 work, 150s, and we'd only work at the 200s. So one thing my first coach would say, you need your base. You need 8 to 12 weeks to build your base. And that's where you'll do your 150s, you'll do your 200s. Involved in that, you'll do a few 110s. And when we do that 110s, it would be more technical, keeping the hips high, knees up, and working on that. You have to work on efficiency when it comes to sprinting. Yes, it's great having that speed, but you have to have the right technique to apply to it. I was very big on that, and I'm quite fortunate the four top coaches which I had were very big on that as well. As you start to develop and you get a little bit older, you can start adding to your program and your strength and conditioning side of it, your bending, bringing in your power elements to help develop that. But I think the thing with speed, there's no substitute for speed, and you just don't overkill it. You listen to your body, you make sure you take the recovery time in. Otherwise, what you do is you end up dampening those sessions. So, you have your 8 to 12 weeks base, which you try and give yourself. And then on, you can work on your speed endurance, you can work on your power elements, work on your accelerations, your block work. You might be running from A to B as fast as you can, but it's a very technical event. I feel anyway, if you want to try and be efficient in movement. I was a 200-meter runner, and I always finished very strong in my races. And people used to think it's because I was very fit, and it wasn't because I was fit. It's because I ran very efficiently, and I was able to maintain my technique for a lot longer than most.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I mentioned just before, that's one of the unknowns at the moment, that World Athletics hasn't provided any direction. I think, that question poses something which is a possibility. It could be an under-20 championships in 2021. It could be an under-21 championships in 2021. I guess they haven't provided any information around that yet. So it's, I think you can probably mount a reasonable case to do either of those two things. So it's almost even impossible to predict which one or what World Athletics might do. It's certainly not something that I'd want to predict now and have people changing plans or putting plans together, given that we've got no certainty on it whatsoever. I guess now that World Athletics have got a number of their other decisions out of the way, hopefully they'll be turning their mind to what to do with the under-20s and provide that advice to us as fairly soon, or publicly provide the input as to what will happen. So we'll share that as soon as we can. And again, once we get that information, we'll need to turn around a selection policy and greater information around what we will do with that team. So we'll certainly do that as quickly as we possibly can. Again, it's one of those unknowns, isn't it? It's difficult and frustrating, and hopefully it's not causing too much stress for those athletes that were in contention for Nairobi this year, and obviously awaiting that information for what might be sitting there for next year.
Yeah, no, and I like to say, Andrew, it sounds very repetitive right now about the unknown and the information that we're getting, but I think just to let you know, as soon as the information we get in, we try and get it there straight away. And yeah, at the moment there seems to be a lot more important things going on in the world, but as soon as we get that in, we'll put that across.
Yeah. Next question for you, Christian's coming from Mike Hurst, one of our very, very successful and great coaches. So there's a bit to this. So I'll get through it. So What is the government rule in New South Wales, and does it vary elsewhere about the number of athletes permitted to work with a coach? That is to say, is it one-on-one? And is there any exception for state champions or actionable team members? I have 2 athletes training together, observing social spacing to the max, and I've designated one as coach and one as protege. Is that okay? And meanwhile, as I as a coach, so designated under normal conditions, can video their sessions from afar, with the videos to be viewed via social media platform for discussion at a later time and date. Is there any problems with that? And would calling out the occasional encouragement, e.g., well done, keep going, really non-technical advice, get me into any trouble on the sidelines while videoing? I think that's that's the question. I think it's one that most coaches are probably grappling with at the moment. What are your thoughts on that, Christian? Do you have any thinking on that?
Yeah, it's it's a very tough one. You know, we're working in a high performance environment where we're working with elite athletes who have goals and aspirations and trying to achieve them. And at the moment we have to go on the government's regulations and what they've advised really around exercising and public gathering and social distancing. I think that's important right now, especially for us as you know as a nation, to try and really get rid of this virus, which is around at the moment. So I think we gotta follow what the government regulations are right now, and I think there might be slight differences from state to state, but generally it's the key messaging. You know, let's try and practice our social distancing, avoid public gatherings. Listen to what
Yeah.
they have to say.
It seems to me that what Hursty's talking about there probably meets that. I don't know the regulations close enough in New South Wales to say for sure whether it does, but it seems like a pragmatic approach to ensure that some coaching and some training, more importantly, can continue. Yeah, it is a tough situation, and probably even tougher for technical events where access to facilities is really limited.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's real hard.
That's the last question that we've got there, Christian. It's been great to have a chat and answer a few of those things that have come through from the athletics community.
Nah, it's been good. It's been good fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully everyone's got some answers out of that and enjoyed hearing from us. And we'll be back next week for the next instalment on the Q&A. Thanks, everyone.